All right. So, US stocks have been holding up exceptionally well. Um, Gone to weekly closes. We had our highest weekly close ever last week. So, for me, SPX, it's just going to keep on pushing, keep on trucking until we start seeing otherwise play out. So, it's strong, and it's not even getting. This doesn't mean any rate cuts over in the US. Which is probably a good sign. Once we do start seeing rate cuts, it's starting to suggest that there is some weakness starting to come into the economy over there, and the Fed needs to sort of step in to help pep up the market and provide a bit of relax the monetary policy a little bit. So the fact that they're not doing that and the market's still going up suggests that things are still looking good. We can jump into the NASDAQ as well. And same deal for the NASDAQ. Highest weekly close last week ever. And pretty close to jumping above the all-time high again this week. So markets are still open at the moment. Probably unlikely it gets there today. But, if we do get another green day tomorrow, it'll be back into that all-time high territory. So for me, US markets looking strong. You do not want to have been a seller back in May. As we can see, we're well above those May levels at the moment. Moving over to Bitcoin. And we're going to want to zoom.
What happened on Friday with the run up to the 72, because that was a harsh retrace.
Yeah, I'll jump out to the hourly. So we poked, maybe I'll go 4-hour chart. I'll be able to see it a bit better. All right, so we got a bit of ranging going on here at the highs. And it was starting to just carry on for a little bit too long. And then we saw that on Friday or Saturday, my time, it poked its head just above this prior high here, and then it got heavily rejected. And it got rejected pretty significantly. It's a 3.5, 4K candle going down. But it did bounce from that level quite nicely and held this local 50% level. So since then, in the premium, it was pretty much after this dump and we started chopping here. I posted up that if we hold this level here, this 50% level at 69.2, then it's likely that we're going to come up and test 70,200. Now, where did I get that figure from? I got it from, and I'm going to have to clean up this chart in a second. And the colors are inversed because I've gone, this is how it's set up at the moment. But it's the high to the low, 50% level, 70,200. It's pretty much come up, tested it, and rejected. It's not often that we see the 50% level push through on the first attempt. So as long as it starts to sort of flip this ranges high, so from about 69,500 to around that 69,700, as long as it sort of stays above that zone, we can expect another test of this 70,250. And if it does reject, we expect it to reject less than what it has here. And then on the third attempt, if it gets a third attempt, it's likely to push through. If we start to see the rejections being harder than what the first rejection was, then we're going to be coming down to start testing these lower levels again at 69,200. And that's sort of where Bitcoin is at the moment. It's just it's a waiting game. I think we really need to have a lot of patience. We're not in a bear market, and we're going down to 50K. At least that's not what I'm seeing at the moment. If it was to get down to 50K, it is still technically in the bull market. It's not written off just yet. However, I don't think I think we've had enough. We've had now 90 days below the all-time high, and I think those days are starting to get a bit numbered now. So for me, I'm still bullish on Bitcoin. Um, I'm definitely looking forward to it ripping. I'm starting to get a bit impatient myself, but yeah, I think we are looking pretty good. And it's interesting, like the sentiment right now in this 69 to 70k range. I feel this personally. I feel the same as when we were back. I'll go out to the daily. I think the sentiment feels quite similar to when we were trading back here at around 63k. But we're up 10% from that point. But we had a big sell off and then a bit of sideways. It feels like we had a big sell off, 4k. But realistically, we're still trading in this upper range that we actually haven't a lot of time in yet. Um, so for me, I think it's interesting how the sentiment, even in yourself, changes, even though the price is in a completely better position than what it was compared to, say, 2 months ago. I might just jump into Ethereum. So Ethereum is struggling pretty big time with this 4K level at 4,000, but it is holding up okay. Like when it got back up there in March, when Bitcoin made its all-time high, it got rejected hard. And now we came up to test it again, and the rejection's not as hard. That's what I was trying to sort of talk about with Bitcoin. You get your first attempt, you get rejected hard. Then you get your second attempt, if you get rejected, you start holding these prior ranges, the prior range highs. They start getting flipped into support, and your retracements don't get as deep. And then on the third attempt, if it doesn't get through, hopefully the retracements even less again. So for me, Ethereum, I think, is still looking strong. I would be happy with how this chart sort of looks. We can see we've still got plenty of room to the downside as well. Like, could see it get down to that 3,400 level, and it's still on the bullish side of the 50% level to continue up. But at the moment, it looks like it's holding the line pretty well at 3,600, which is what we want to see. We want to see it hold this range, these range highs over here. If it does start to break down, then you've got these range highs over here at 3,400 that are going to be the support. But when you do fall back down below, you then have to contest with the resistance here and the resistance up here, as opposed to holding here, and the only resistance you got is over here at 4K. I might jump into Solana. I feel like I'm doing speed charting, bit of speed week.
I was just about to say, go through this really quickly. So, really interesting. I touched upon kind of, how many mem coins have been going through recently. I think it's like 300 a day, which is not particularly good for the chain, I think, long term. Like the last season, like I explained last time, they're heavily into the NFTs. Yes, it's bringing a lot of liquidity in, but actually, what's the damage doing for their reputation? In terms of the actual price, I touched upon this last time. It's kind of hovering between about the 150 and the 175 range. And I think it's still got some more time around this. It just kind of keeps kind of fluctuating at the moment, but again, I'm waiting for that big breakout. Yes, Solana's got huge volume at the moment. It's got a huge following. And I can see when that rip does happen, it's going to go through kind of the 180 to the 200 really quickly. The next point kind of, the resistance, I see the real big resistance is going to be the 200. If it goes past that, then it's going to go kind of like 220, maybe even up to kind of the all-time high really quickly when BTC breaks. What are your thoughts on that?
I think at the moment it's caught It's in a little bit of no man's land, and I'll explain why. I think was when we had caught up a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about where can the price sort of go, because I
Yeah.
haven't added any of these 50% levels in since we last caught up. So it must have been after this high, but not too recently either. It was definitely in one of our voice calls, but I'd said that we've got this 50% level, which is from the low back here at 112 to this recent high. And I'm pretty sure I was saying that I feel like we're going to come down and test it, which it has. And it did get a nice bounce from that level. Like it's bounced almost, oh, we'll call it about 8% or something like that off the 50% level. But now the reason why I say it's in no man's land is because it's in the bullish side of this local sort of 50% level, but then the high time frame 50% level, which is at 161.50, it's flirting with it and it's below it. So it's in the bear or the weak side of that 50%. So it's really in between these two zones. It's really in a bit of no man's land. If we see a break above 162, then we're going to start to see a bit of strength come back. However, if the longer we stay below, the more likely we are going to come down and test this $150 mark again. Now, what we want to see if we do come down and test it is a stronger bounce out than what we did before, which is sort of inverse to what we were talking about with Bitcoin and Ethereum. When you're testing to the upside, the first test, heavy rejection, second test, less rejection. We don't want to see that here because that's going to suggest that, well, maybe this $150 level is not going to hold. And we're going to start cutting lower. There is a bit of support here because if we look over to the left side, it was resistance, this whole zone, when we had broken right down. So hopefully, it does hold up. I think it probably will. But we'll let the charts do the talking because we don't know what happens over here on the right hand side. Yeah, want to see it hold this $150 level, but otherwise it is looking pretty good. Yeah, I did ask. I'm going to ask now whether we want to have a look at Nia or Sweat. I think we've already got one vote for Nia.
Near. I will throw my hat into the ring as well.
All right, we'll jump into Nia. Nia has been showing a little bit of weakness as well, but it's holding up okay. It's just been showing a little bit. Excuse me. So I've drawn this 50% level here from the low that was set back in April. So this is quite a high time frame low, up to the most recent high at $8.50, and we're sort of sitting bang on the money. And if we look at this in comparison to, we'll say Solana, it is sitting a little bit weaker. So with Solana, we're $11, so about that 7-8%. Oh no, 5.5% off the level, 6% off the level. Whereas with Nia, we're sitting basically bang on it. So I really want to see a bit of a strong bounce out of this level. I think it's still okay, still definitely okay. Well, we're maintaining this as a low. Would like to see this level here get held as a higher low. However, if we do sweep it and bounce out, that would be fine. But don't want to be spending too much time at all below the 50%. This could be looked at as a golden pocket, which is what it hit. Okay, so it hit the bottom part of the golden pocket last time. We can see that there. So if it was to come down, we really want to see this held. This low here held. So if it was to come down, bounce off the 618 and up we go and get back above that 50% level relatively fast. That would be the ideal situation in my mind. Overall, though, I'm still happy with how things are sitting. This is only a very intermediate high low here. This is the major key level to watch, which is a long way away from where we are. Invalidation for me on my investments in NIA are probably sitting around this level here. If we start seeing that get broken to the upside, the resistance levels have stayed unchanged at $9.40, give or take 20 cents, $11.80. Then there's a few more up the top. I'm still a firm believer that we will get up there. It's just a matter of how long is it going to take and how high do we go. Sideways movement is fine, but when we're having these sell-offs and it's not really bouncing that strong, you got to start to get a little bit wary of that. But yeah, NIA's still fine. It's up, over 6x from its lows. I might jump into the NIA BTC chart as well. The BTC chart's quite important, at least for me anyway. Okay, so we're looking at putting in a higher low on the BTC chart as well. It was good that we got a higher high in here. So now we just want to see this low kept. We are in the weak half of this range. However, this is only very local range as well. I mean, if we were to pull this chart down to the lows, roughly, in a high time frame chart, it's still in the strong zone. So I'd probably be looking more at this chart than that last one, just because it does look like that we're coming down to put in a significant higher low. So maintaining above this low here is very important in the short term. And this red line here, we really need to start getting some closes above it to start taking some of that market share away from the rest of the alts and from Bitcoin, and to continue the upwards trajectory against BTC. If I go out to a weekly, we can see that it's acted as support and resistance. We've got resistance here, we've got support here, we've got resistance here leading into the bottom of the bear. So it was never going to be a slice straight through on the first attempt. It was always going to take a couple, which is what we're looking at. But similar to what we've been talking about, on the first attempt, we got a heavy rejection. Second attempt, sort of got a bit of sideways movement, and now we're rejecting. So we want this to not be lower than here. So then on the third attempt, it's either going to slice through, or maybe we have a softer rejection before we then continue up. Well, that's where my thoughts sort of sit for NIA at the moment. We've got Bitcoin's coming back a little bit now, sitting at 69,500. I did want. I'll see if there's any questions in here. Yeah, we can take a quick look at Injective and DOT. I might start with DOT, and rather than looking at the USD chart, we'll just go straight into the BTC chart. So for DOT, this is a classic example of an old coin that is just not really performing necessarily, particularly against BTC. It's been on a downward spiral for, you can say, the best part of 3 years. So this against Bitcoin, it looks weak. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look strong at all. And I'm not picking on DOT specifically. There's a lot of coins from this period that have charts extremely similar, and they're top 100 tokens. We'll jump into the USD. So the USD chart is looking a little bit better, but still not great. And the reason why I say it's not great is this is on the weekly. You can see we got high, high. Now we've broken back down and we're trading in the same range. We're actually now trading below the range. So now we have to look to the left to see where's the support going to come in. So if we start getting a little bit lower, then around that $5.70 mark, 550 to 570 is where the support can come in. But to the upside, it's got quite a bit of baggage. There's been a lot of trading in this current range, or above this current range, up to around that $7.50 level. It's going to be quite heavy in resistance. And then we've got where all the heavy rejections are sort of taking place as well. Can draw a fib, or a 50% level rather. I'll just fix that up so we can see it properly. So we're trading in the weak half of the 50% level. Yeah. So it probably seems cheap at the moment, but this is a good example of why it's cheap and why it's a token that I probably wouldn't be going near. See, it's been rejected, sliced straight through the 50%, came up and tested it a number of weeks later and has rejected again, which would explain why we're starting to see lower prices. It's just been rejected, so it's going to look for a bottom at some point, but it's going to really struggle to contend with 50% levels, range highs, range lows before it starts taking off again. I'll be surprised if we saw DOT get back into new all-time highs this cycle. I'd be really surprised. I think if it got up to $20 would be a pretty big feat on its own as well. Maybe somewhere around that $15, $16 level would be something a bit more realistic. If we, this is obviously purely speculation and just looking at the chart as a whole, but yeah, it's definitely not looking strong. It's not looking good, and definitely one that I wouldn't be getting into. Have a look at Inge. Injective's had a little bit of an injection recently. See, it's had a bit of a bounce on the Bitcoin chart, although it has had a pretty decent sell-off on the Bitcoin chart. Now this is good movement, and that's the lows, and then it's starting to pull out, and then it's taken off. But how it's been rejected from up here is the interesting part. It's down, nearly 60% from its high against Bitcoin. Would have been better to see this sort of stop above these highs, but it's gone a little bit lower and it's formed these highs here as support. But I think for Injective, it does have this upwards movement. It hasn't really been, when you zoom out, it is looking all right. Might just jump into the USD charts. Okay. So for Injective, it's got this distribution area to contend with to get back above, which, that's this zone here is pretty much the resistance, all the resistance that it's got. The only issue is that it is a fairly large area. It's from about $30 up to about 45, which is a pretty decently sized range. But once it does get up above there, then it's off to the races again. It's got no overhead resistance on the USD chart. It will on the Bitcoin chart, but that's fine. It's better than having resistance zones and baggage on both USD and BTC charts. I think it's looking okay from that perspective, I might see if we can get some 50% levels going. All right, so we're above the entire chart 50% level, which is good. Means we're now in the strong half, and we'll try see if we can find where some resistance zones are. All right, so we've got the rectangle box here, which should probably be a little bit higher than what it is. Yeah. All right, so we've got this resistance zone here, 30 to 32. Get through there, and we've got the 50% level around 36. Probably be a fib somewhere around the 41, 42 level, 618, which is also the range highs. I might chuck it in there. Got it the wrong way around. Anyway, so we've got 1, 2, 3 resistance zones. Get through there, off to the races again. Injective, yeah, it's not a bad bet. And particularly if you got to buy down here in this zone around that $24 mark. Not a bad investment. I'd be more inclined to jump into an injective bag before I jumped into a dot bag. So one thing I did want to talk about was I saw in the chat there was some talking about leverage trading and stuff like that. I'm definitely do not advise jumping into leverage trading if you haven't done some paper trading first and understand how it works. And yet you don't have a clear defined risk management sort of setup for yourself. I do not advise not using stop losses at all. You need to have stop losses, and they need to be at your invalidation levels, your key invalidation levels. If you don't have a stop loss and you don't have invalidation levels, then you shouldn't be trading leverage. It's as simple as that. Yeah, you're basically just ready to piss money up the wall, which I don't want to see people within my community doing that. Regarding how long to hold a trade for, well, it depends what your target is. And it's not a matter of, right, I'm going to hold a trade for 4 hours and then wherever the price is at, that's it, I'm out. Or I'm going to hold a trade for 2 months. It's really, for me, it's irrelevant. You have where you want to get your entry, you have your price target, and however long it takes to do its thing, that's how long it takes. You may have invalidation, or you may see a change in trend as your the price action comes to hand, and you might say, "Oh, I actually think that I'm in the green here, but it looks like the trend's flipping, so I'm going to close out." But that's really irrelevant of time. So yeah, I just wanted to just speak to the leverage trading a little bit. Don't recommend it for people that don't know what they're doing. Understand it, and be safe with it because you can liquidate your entire portfolio very quickly. Leverage is lethal. Yeah, it's definitely lethal to those that aren't disciplined. You have to be disciplined to trade leverage. There's no doubt about it. I think who have we got? How do I see who's here? Oh, g'day, Muji. Hey, Zenon. G'day, Isrima. Good to see you guys have all joined in. I hope that helps you a little bit, Isrima, with regards to leverage trading. And like whether you're doing 50x or 5x or 2x, that also doesn't really matter depending on your position size. Um, but yeah, I can talk more to that at a later time, or if you guys in premium want to learn a bit more about the ins and outs of leverage trading, I'm happy to do that separately as well. Is there any judgment? How do you mean? Is there any judgment? Just waiting to see what bouldering like people perceiving people who do one over the other as inferior. Yeah, there is definitely people that would label people of that trade a certain way, a certain thing like degens and whatnot. But I'll be honest, I know people who solely only do day trading on futures, and they're some of the smartest minds in trading. And then I also know some people that only do long term holding. A good example of a long term holder would be like Ben Cowan, however you say his name. Um, he's quite technical. Whether I agree with all of his technical um, understandings or not is something different. But he's extremely technical and thorough. He's quite a smart fella, but he only does long term holding. Um, and then you have some of the really good Elliott wave counters and price action traders, and they'll purely just stick to day trading. I think it's really whatever works for you. You can even do a combination of both, which is probably what I tend to do a little bit, a combination of both, leaning more towards a long term holding. I really only day trade with, for me, day trading, it's like as if I'm going to the casino. You go with a pre planned amount. And if I lose $500, no worries, it's all good. I'll wake up in the morning and still have eggs and bacon for breakfast. I don't go day trading with my entire portfolio. Whereas in my long term trading, my long term holding, I've got, you know, probably 150, 300x. No, it's probably close to 300x the amount that I would day trade with sitting in my long term holding. So that I do not go to the casino with because I won't be eating eggs and bacon in the morning. I'll be on baked beans. Yeah, I think it's just an ego thing. It's a big ego thing. Like, you can do a day trade and have this really sick looking P&L slip that you can post up everywhere, and it's like I did 1,000x, or 1,000% trade. Look at me, but in reality, how much did I have on that trade? How much have they lost to get to that trade? I think it's a big dick measuring competition, in my opinion, or at least it can be. It's not to say though that leverage trading is a bad thing or a wrong thing. I just think it's used in the wrong way by a lot of people, um, and it's got a stigma about it around it being a full, like you are going to the casino, to the sand casino, or whatever. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can be smart with it, or maybe you do treat it a little bit like going to the casino, and that's why you only go with a little bit. Um, yeah, just really depends on what your style is. I think it's not definitely not for the faint-hearted. That's for sure. Gee, that's some serious diamond hands, Hunter. 30 years. Good on you, mate. in Japan waiting to turn a profit. Hey, now's the time. Now's the time. We got there. Wow. Yeah, 34 years. If you bought at the all-time high, madness. But anyway, guys, I think with that, we'll probably call it an evening or morning for me, at least. Anyway, yeah. Hope that you guys got something out of today. And until next time, stay safe.